Before being elected to Congress, Representative Giffords served in the state legislature. Former state lawmaker Ken Cheuvront and Senator Linda Lopez served with Giffords at the Capitol. Earlier today, I talked to them about their colleague and their friend. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Horizon. This is going to be, I know, uncomfortable, but I want to make it as cathartic an experience as we can, talking about someone who is more than a former, you were more than former colleagues.
Yes.
Of Gabrielle Giffords. You were friends. Talk to us about that.
Yes. I first met Gabby when we were both running for the House of Representatives here in Arizona. And then after that, when we got elected, we moved in with Ken, and we're roommates with Ken for 2 years. And then Gabby and I rented a house from Ken for a year. And then there was a building that Ken had renovated for Andy Nichols, former Senator Andy Nichols. And Gabby and I rented an apartment there for 2 years. Plus, not only being roommates, we were best friends. We're still best friends. We've traveled together in other countries across the United States. I mean, she's a very close friend.
Indeed, and a close friend for you as well. Talk to us about the relationship and how you all met.
Well, it was interesting. At the time, I was running for leader of the Democratic caucus, and so I found out about Gabby because she went to a college next to my alma mater, and Linda, and so I went down there and just trying to get to know them and help them with their campaigns. And typical of Gabby, we were talking about this earlier, she was very frugal. She is a very frugal person. And she pulls up to this location in an old beat-up pickup. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I know their family owned El Campo tires. And it wasn't until later that I realized that she just was cheap, that she was never going to spend money on a nice car or vehicle.
That's right. She always bought her clothes at the used clothing store. She didn't believe in buying anything new. She just really wasn't into like putting herself together. She just, she loves jewelry and loves big clunky jewelry, but no. And the reason she looks good today is because one of her staff members who was shot in the incident on Saturday, Pam Simon, does all her shopping for her.
Really?
And so Pam puts her together.
So to this day, it's still tough for her to go spend that money on some nice clothes,
That's exactly right.
You mentioned El Campo Tire. Now, is that a tire store in Tucson?
It was a tire store that her grandfather started back in Tucson. I don't know if it was in the 30s, but it was something that was well known. And before she entered the legislature, she was the face of El Campo Tires. She did commercials for them. And so she really, I think, you live in Tucson now.
Yes,
I saw some of the...
Yeah, we saw her all the time. The buck stretcher, I remember that, that commercial for El Campo Tires.
And of course, we made fun of her all the time about that.
Oh, I'm sure. And as far as the legislature and dealing with her in the legislature, personal stories are fascinating. I want to get back to those as well. But as a lawmaker, talk to us about what she emphasized, what were things that were of concern to her then, and did you see that moving over into the United States House of Representatives?
Well, I would say some of the things that she really worked on a lot when she was in the Arizona Legislature have carried over. For instance, the environment and energy and that sort of thing. Those are big issues for her here in Arizona, and they continue to be in Washington. I have to say, she's one of the hardest working legislators I ever met. She, unlike me, I go to bed early. She stays up late at night and, gets up later in the morning than I do, but worked really hard, excellent in working with her constituents.
Was she always like that when in the state legislature
as
well?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Very hard worker.
Is that what you saw?
She was amazing. I mean, I got tired just watching her.
Yeah.
She would, work endlessly. One of her mentors was Senator Nichols, who she adored, until he passed away, and then she took his seat. But, I was one of the persons I could read something and then would just kind of go on. I ran 2 companies. She was incessantly either talking to constituents or working on issues, but nonstop.
Oh, I would always tell her, I said, she'd spend like long periods of time meeting with people, and I say, Gabby, when are you going to take care of yourself? You need to shut it off a little bit. You need to get on to the next thing. But and to this day, she's still that way. She never sees a stranger. She talks to everybody. She will listen to all of their concerns and whatever they want to talk to her about. She always has a smile on her face, and so, yeah.
Yeah, she's into politics. I mean, and this is something I always notice about her, she really wanted to make a difference. She really wants to make a difference. And I think that's what got her involved in politics, because she's not, originally when we first met her, I don't think she was a natural politician.
No. I was going to ask, would you consider her a policy wonk? Would you consider her?
Yes, definitely.
Really?
I was more of a politician. She was a policy wonk. And she's become a great statesperson.
Is that how you see it as well?
Yes, oh yeah, and definitely. And I have seen so much growth in her since she went to Congress. I mean, the speeches that she gives now, her ability to communicate her ideas, she's really phenomenal.
Back to the state legislature, talk to us about the district she represented. What kind of an area is this? What are the folks like? For those that aren't familiar with Tucson in that area, what about her district?
Sure, it's central Tucson.
But the original district that she won in
Right.
was a little different than the one she had.
Well, that first one, that was up on the northwest side of town. But then the district that she was elected from is central Tucson, and more the like down Broadway area where there's a lot of businesses, kind of a middle income to upper middle income area. I'd say more progressive, more liberal in terms of the kinds of folks that vote there, but not a little close registration in terms of DNR, that sort of thing.
We talked about whether or not she was a policy wonk or a politician, and you mentioned that she was very much into the details and these sorts of things. Did you see that evolve into someone who maybe had more ambition as the years went by, or was that ambition always there?
She was always a nerd, and she always had a lot of ambition. I mean, the things she had done in her life, from grad school to living in Mexico for a year with a German, I forget what the group was.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
And we traveled, we both traveled around in different parts of the world with her, or her mother,
Right.
many times, because she's extremely close to her family. I mean, she adores both of her parents.
Yes.
Is
Oh yeah, definitely. She's really connected and attached to them, and does everything she can to make sure that they're comfortable. She's had a rough couple of years. The past couple of years, her father was bitten by a rattlesnake and has had all kinds of complications from that, and then a lot of other medical problems on top of that. So I know she's always been very, very concerned about him. But kind of the light of her life now is her nephew. So,
Oh, really?
yes,
Talk to us more about that.
Yes, her sister Melissa had a baby, and all of us were surprised by that. But she had a baby, and so Gabby is really, I can remember going shopping with her in the store at Congress for her new nephew.
Interesting.
Well, and you can't, her husband too. He's
gosh.
a wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful man. We were talking earlier, we went through a lot of her boyfriends. And I got to a point where I said, Gabby, I'm not going to meet any more of them. And so I wouldn't meet Mark for about 8 months until I finally met him. And then when I met him, he was just an amazing man. And you could just see she is so in love, is in love with him. And it was wonderful for us to see that she's finally found somebody that was her true equal. And they're both amazing people.
Yeah. I was a bridesmaid at Gabby's wedding, and so she asked me to give a toast. And I talked about Mark, and how when she came home talking about Mark, that I knew that this was the one, because like Ken, I'd heard about all of them, and met some of them, but this was different. Mark was different. I knew it was this was the one for her.
Yeah, and only friends can know those sorts
That's
of things.
exactly
Well,
right.
it's interesting. He has an identical twin brother who's also an astronaut. And at the beginning, she couldn't tell the difference between them. I don't know if Mark knew that. And she goes, I knew Mark because he had a mustache, so M for mustache, and Mark had a mustache.
And then they switched.
Yes.
Sounds like a bad sitcom.
Yeah,
going
really.
on there. We've heard Gabrielle described in the media, obviously around the country. Those who aren't quite familiar, but I want to get your assessment on this as either a conservative Democrat or a moderate Democrat in a relatively tough district in terms of 50-50 splits and these sorts of things. Again, is that something she wasn't always and has become? Was she always that kind of a politician? From the looking at it left-right here, it sounds like she's pretty straight down the middle as far as a lot of people's perceptions. What about yours?
I would say she's centrist. She's not real far to the left. She's not really conservative. I would say that the thing that she does best is represent her constituents in her district. And so she's always taking into account how her constituents feel.
Gabby, like I, grew up as a Republican. And so I think that's why we had an affinity, unlike Linda, who was in Berkeley in the 60s.
Yes.
But there's a couple things that always surprised me about Gabby. She was always extremely into the military. She had some kind of commission where she would fly with the jets and refueling missions.
Right.
And she was in the Reserve Guard or something.
Yeah, she very, very closely connected to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and I can't remember the name of the group, but she's still a part of that. And they are crazy about her on base.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
But that was always something she talked about. We used to give her a hard time
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
What are you hearing now? What are you hearing from friends, other friends? What are you hearing from family? Give us a sense of what it's been like for you here these past few days, couple of days.
You know, when it happened, I drove down to Tucson because I wanted to be with Linda and Elaine Richardson, who's also one of her closest friends, and David Bradley.
Yeah.
We didn't have a chance to talk. We still haven't talked to her parents, and I think we're very concerned about her father because she was the,
apple of
his
his
eye.
Yes.
I mean, and her mother's, a wonderful woman, an amazing woman. Both of them are, but she's the stronger, I would think, of the two of them. Yeah. And Mark, I'm sure because his best friend, his brother, is up in the space station. It's got to be tough for him also.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I called Jinx, her mom, yesterday and left a message for her. I don't want to intrude upon them. I know that right now is an extremely challenging time for them, and I think once we see some stability here, we know things are really on the mend, then I'll go up to see them and talk with them. But sometimes I know that folks kind of want to be just to themselves, and so I don't want to intrude upon that. But as I told Jinx on the phone that we were really thinking about her, and all of us are very upset about it.
Well, and we understand that, and that's why we don't want to intrude too much on you, and because you're friends, and this is a very difficult time. But give us one final thought about what we should know about Gabrielle Giffords and what kind of person she is, and just general thoughts about the situation.
She truly is one of the most giving and thoughtful people. Yes. I mean, we were talking about, I don't think we ever heard her say anything bad.
No.
The two of us would say bad things, and she would just never say a word when we were talking about different people. She's the most hardest working person that I know, and that somebody would do this to her is unconscionable. I mean, I don't get it. It's incomprehensible to me.
Yeah, I got to tell you, she's the best friend you could ever ask for. I know that she would do anything for me, and that feeling goes the other way as well. With all of the stuff that was going on with her election, and I got married the day after Thanksgiving, and when I told Gabby that I was getting married, she said, "I want to have a bridal shower for you. I want to have a bridal shower for you." So we planned it. It was 2 days after the election, on the 4th of November. And she went all out. She and Elaine both, they co-hosted it. It was a fabulous time. So, and she and Elaine and I all sat up until 1:30 in the morning talking after everybody else had left at about 10 o'clock. So.
Well, and again, that's what friends are for.
Yeah.
And we thank you both very much for joining. I know, again, this is probably very difficult for you, but I hope that it helped a little bit to talk about your friend. It certainly helped us to learn more about Representative Gabrielle Giffords. Thank you so much for joining us.